One of the problems with recruiting for investment banking is not the knowledge or skills you acquire, but the access to talk with real investment bankers to put your best foot forward. Our sponsor, WSO Academy, can provide those connections with 60 head mentors who are finance professionals at top firms like Goldman, Centerview, and JP Morgan. Imagine being able to get on the phone within 24 hours with one of the Academy's 1,300 mentors right before a critical interview. Get on the waitlist for WSO Academy today by clicking the link in the show notes or by visiting wallstreetoasis.com/academy. All right. Welcome to Investment Banking Insights. My name is Alex Mason and I am your host. This is the only show dedicated to helping you learn both the technical and non-technical aspects of the investment banking process. And I'm so excited that you're here joining me. We're talking about all the fundamentals. These first few hundred episodes are just completely dedicated to understanding the fundamentals, especially the technicals. And that's what we're going through. We've gone through all of the basics of accounting, the basics of valuation, the basics of enterprise and equity value, and now we're going through the basics of discounted cash flow analysis. And we've been talking a lot about the concept of terminal value. What is terminal value? How do you calculate it? What kind of discount rate do you use? Those kinds of questions. And today's question pivots off of that a little bit. And it is this: what kind of growth rates do we use for calculating the terminal value? We know that with terminal value, we're summing up cash flows. You're going out into perpetuity because this business theoretically will last forever, right? But we know it's not going to grow at 20, 30, 50% annually forever. So what do we use as that number? We have to come up with some kind of number in our model, right? Concepts are great and we need to understand the concepts, but when the rubber meets the road, we have to plug some numbers into that model to get an output, right? So that's what we need to do. What do we put as our growth rate? Now, let's remember what we're doing here. At this phase in a company's life cycle, it is mature and growing slowly. And as a rule of thumb, what we can do to estimate this rate is use the GDP growth of the country that the company is located in. Now, for example, first let's define it. GDP, what does that mean? Maybe you've heard that term, but maybe you don't know exactly what it is. GDP stands for Gross Domestic Product, and it represents the overall economic productivity of a country. There are many components that go into gross domestic product, such as the investments a country is making, the effects of government monetary policy, the consumption of the country. But overall, what you really need to know is that it measures economic productivity. That's what GDP is. And different countries have higher and lower levels of GDP at different times. So for right now, as I'm recording this in 2023, the GDP of the United States of America is somewhere around 1 to 2% per year, which is really, really slow, right? Like you would think, wow, I didn't realize it was that low. But yeah, the United States has a very mature economy. Although we're a relatively young country at only a couple hundred years old, we've reached this very high growth in the last century, and now things have slowed down a bit. So that's kind of where we're at right now with US GDP growth. And that fluctuates. Sometimes it's higher. Sometimes, I think in 2021, it was a little bit higher in the mid-single digits. But that's where we're at. And then you can contrast this with another country, the other super major economy in the world, China. China's economy via the GDP metric is growing a little bit higher of a growth rate, somewhere around 5 or 6% per year, which is still really impressive considering they have 1 billion people in the country. So it just depends on the country. And earlier in the United States life cycle as a country, for example, after World War II ended and there was the post-World War II boom in the United States economy, the U.S. was growing much faster, far faster. And so the terminal value back in those days might have been totally different versus today. So today, if you're looking at a US-based company, you might put in 1 to 2% as your terminal value. And this roughly corresponds, I think, with inflation. So just a kind of a slower growth rate. But, inflation could differ wildly depending on what's going on. And I'm definitely not an economist, so don't quote me on that part. But do understand that terminal growth, relatively slow, match it to the country's GDP. That's the long and short of it. Okay, that's what I got for you today here on Investment Banking Insights. My name is Alex Mason. I am your host. Join me next time and we'll talk some more about terminal value, specifically about exit multiples. All right, I'll see you there.